They're the ones who ship the cocaine from Colombia to Mexico. Mexico trucks it in here. Yes, they are a crucial part of this. There's been indictment after indictment. This has to do with our country. The cocaine and meth and fentanyl, they're killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. This is our hemisphere, and we should be installing puppet governments throughout the region.
I'm not gonna peddle the bull theories about how Venezuela is at the heart of our drug problems. Fentanyl comes, the material is coming from China. It's trafficked to the United States
China. It's all from Mexico.
No, it's literally
it's not from China.
From the ingredients for the drug
not anymore.
Come from
not
China.
Anymore.
Well, on this week's episode of Her Take, Ann Coulter peddled the exact same Trump administration lies that the motivating factor in taking out Nicolás Maduro, the leader of Venezuela, was due to the fact that he was a part of a major drug trafficking operation, sending drugs to the United States, and she even tried to make us believe that Venezuela is behind the fentanyl epidemic, which literally no one is saying, including the Trump administration. Like, unhinged. But Cenk, before I further debunk this big lie from not just Ann Coulter, but others who are defending what the Trump administration just did, what are your 2 cents?
Yeah, so look, if you don't know that this has nothing to do with drugs, you're a bit of a sucker. Sorry, but it's just true. And even people in the right-wing movement are at least being honest about it, like including Megyn Kelly saying, yeah, we're just taking their oil, and that's just us exerting our power. And half of them are saying good, or more than half are saying good, right? But it's interesting that Ann Coulter, who usually doesn't mind saying evil things, is still pretending it's about drugs. I'm kind of surprised by that.
Well, she also says good that we're taking their oil. We should, and use the ridiculous excuse that this is part of the Monroe Doctrine. I can't, I really can't. Please don't insult our intelligence, please, I'm begging you. Please don't insult our intelligence, especially when, as these lies are being told, Trump is simultaneously bragging about how we're taking their oil, we're taking their oil. This is all about the oil. What do I need from Rodriguez, Delcy Rodriguez, who is now the effective leader of Venezuela after the ouster of Nicolás Maduro? She needs to give me access to the oil and other things. That was a direct quote. Okay, please don't insult our intelligence. But anyway, as we told you weeks ago, the Cartel de los Soles, which Maduro was allegedly the head of, right? Doesn't exist, and it appears that the DOJ has conceded as much because they have dropped that charge against Nicolás Maduro in their case against him. So according to the New York Times, the Trump administration designated a Venezuelan, take a look at this headline. They designated a Venezuelan slang term for drug corruption in the military as a terrorist organization, and said that Maduro led it. Now, Trump used that dubious claim to oust Maduro from power. The claim does trace back to 2020, a 2020 grand jury indictment specifically of Maduro that was drafted by Trump's Justice Department. The Treasury Department designated Cartel de los Soles as a terrorist organization after that. This was in July of last year, 2025, effectively copying language from the earlier indictment. And then in November, Secretary of State Marco Rubio ordered the State Department to do the same. But Cartel de los Soles, again, as the New York Times reported, is actually a slang term invented by the Venezuelan media dating back to the 1990s for officials who were corrupted by drug money, right? Now, prosecutors still accuse Maduro of participating in a drug trafficking conspiracy, but they abandoned the claim that Cartel de los Soles was an actual organization. Instead, the revised indictment states that it refers to a patronage system and a culture of corruption fueled by drug money. Now, the old indictment refers 32 times to Cartel de los Soles and describes Maduro as that cartel's leader. However, the new indictment mentions it only twice and says that he, like his predecessor, President Hugo Chavez, participated in, perpetuated, and protected this patronage system. Now, experts in Latin American crime and narcotics issues issued other aspects criticize other aspects of the indictment. So the indictment still has all sorts of problems. It's riddled with issues. For instance, they added the head of a Venezuelan prison gang called Tren de Aragua as a supposed co-conspirator of Maduro's. The connection described in the indictment is thin. It says only that the gang leader, in phone calls in 2019 with someone he thought was a Venezuelan official, offered escort services to protect drug shipments passing through Venezuela. Okay.
That's nothing.
Now, The Dissident, which is a fantastic content creator on Substack, for lack of a better word. They don't have bylines, so I don't know their names, but they do incredible reporting. They have a theory that the reason why the DOJ did this, partly the reason why they did this, is because the CIA was involved in trafficking drugs to Venezuela and they don't want that to come out. I'll give you the details of that in just a second. But first, Cenk.
Yeah, so if it was about drugs, then why did we let Juan Orlando Hernandez go? He's former president of Honduras, one of the biggest drug traffickers in human history, convicted in US courts. There's absolutely no question he did it. And Trump gave him a pardon. So if you were concerned about drugs, there is 0% chance you would let Hernandez go. So he's not concerned about drugs at all, not 1%. You're a total, utter sucker if you believe that line. And you'll believe anything. He could say, I did it for the rabbits. And you'd be like, of course, the Easter Bunny, that's why we had to do it, right? So now on a lighter note, YTP Renewed wrote in a super chat on YouTube saying, if their quarrel were with cocaine, they'd go after Wall Street stockbrokers for driving demand for it in the first place, not whomever supplies it. Guys, if you cared about drugs, there's a million ways to tackle the drug epidemic, including by going after drug companies here in America that started the fentanyl problem in the first place.
Cocaine is not a problem. I mean, look, I'm sure there are people, likely people who are very affluent because cocaine is supposedly expensive, who have an addiction to cocaine. But in terms of the vast majority of overdose deaths in this country, it's overwhelmingly caused by fentanyl, overwhelmingly.
Yeah, and Venezuela has nothing to do with fentanyl. Okay, you got that now. Look, last two things from what Anna just said that are so hilarious. So in 2019, 6 years ago, one guy from Tren de Aragua called someone he thought was a Venezuelan official but was not. And that is why Maduro is working with Tren de Aragua. If I was on the jury and I heard that, I'd say, no, that proves he is not working with Tren de Aragua, because you literally have zero connections between that gang and the Venezuelan government, let alone Maduro at the top of that government.
Yep.
So this is a joke in every way imaginable. And Anna's right. Once you say, okay, well, Cartel de las Solas, most important thing in the world, and that's the Venezuelan cartel. And then you go, never mind, it's not a real cartel, it doesn't exist. Okay, you just told us the whole thing's a lie.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the CIA's involvement in trafficking drugs to Venezuela, by the way. So as The Dissident reports, the Justice Department's decision to drop the Cartel de los Soles charge against Nicolás Maduro likely has to do with the fact that further investigation into the term Cartel de los Soles would expose the CIA's own involvement in drug trafficking. Now, the phrase Cartel of the Suns reportedly emerged in 1993 when two Venezuela National Guard generals, anti-narcotics unit chief Ramon Davila and his successor Orlando Hernandez Villegas, were investigated for drug trafficking and related crimes. So as brigade commanders, each one of them actually wore like a sun insignia, which gave rise to this phrase, Cartel of the Sun. And then when division commanders who wore double suns were later accused of drug trafficking, the name evolved to Cartel de los Soles. However, further investigation into this case shows that Ramon Davila and Orlando Hernandez Villegas were being supported by the CIA when they were smuggling cocaine into the United States. So I apologize, they were actually smuggling drugs into the US, not to Venezuela, so that was my mistake. But 60 Minutes, I didn't know this, but 60 Minutes actually did an investigative report into this at the time. This is back in 1993. So in the piece, which we can't play for copyright reasons, but I'll describe it in the next excerpts from the dissident piece, referring to the drug smuggling done by Ramon Davila, former DEA head Robert Bonner told Mike Wallace, quote, "There was some knowledge on the part of CIA, at least some participation in approving or condoning this to be done." Robert Bonner noted, "If this has not been approved by DEA or an appropriate law enforcement authority in the United States, then it's illegal. It's called drug trafficking. It's called drug smuggling." So why would the CIA do this? Like, what was the grand mission here? What was the plan? What was the objective? Well, Annabelle Grimm, who's the former lead DEA agent in Venezuela, explained, saying that the CIA and the National Guard in Venezuela wanted to let cocaine go into the traffic without doing anything. They wanted to let it come up to the United States, no surveillance. This would enable them to gain the traffickers' confidence, keep their information cool, and it would lead to larger seizures of drugs.
No, it wouldn't.
I mean, obviously, these types of schemes have never worked. She follows that up with, I guess they thought they were going to get Pablo Escobar at the scene of the crime or something, which I found personally ludicrous.
Because, sorry, Annabelle, but you have no idea what's going on. They weren't trying to get the drug traffickers, they were working with the drug traffickers. We know the history of it now. So why did they do it, for example, in places like Colombia? Because they wanted to be able to get money from the drugs and then use that money to fund people like the Contras in Nicaragua. And also right-wing militias all over Latin America and South America. Why? Because, and this is really damning of the right wing in general, not in America, but overall. Because the right wing, if they get into power, will work with us to rip off their own people. They have no morality, so they think, okay, you wanna give me the power in this country? I'll murder anyone you like, CIA. I'll sell you any drugs you like. You put me in charge and then I'll let you rip off Nicaragua, Colombia, Costa Rica. It doesn't matter, just rob us blind. If a left winger gets into office, they hate it, the CIA does, because the left winger then goes, wait, no, this is our natural resources. Why shouldn't we get some of the profits from the oil companies, the banana companies, etc.? And they're like, that's it, murder him, work with the drug traffickers, destroy everything that might help the people of Venezuela, Colombia, etc. So the CIA is a deeply nefarious force. I mean, you want to talk about a deep state, the CIA is a deep state. And the CIA has never done anything to help America as far as I have ever seen. All they've done is great evil, and they do it at the expense of the American people. They're like, oh, we're gonna get American people addicted to drugs? Who cares? That way we could rob the Latin American countries better. Well, okay, then you're disgusting and you're anti-American. And so why, like the CIA should be disbanded immediately. They've never done anything good for America. So, and why is Juan Orlando Hernandez being let go? Because he was a right winger who was working with the CIA, obviously, right?
To traffic drugs in the United States.
To traffic drugs to America. And the CIA is like, oh, you're gonna hurt Americans for the interest of oil companies and other corporations we secretly work for? Yes, that's a Trump, get him out of jail, let's put him back in charge. Now there's a left winger in charge of Honduras, and he's trying to help the citizens of Honduras, and we can't stand it.
I think the biggest misconception about neoliberalism is that neoliberals want small government. That's actually not true. They love big government, but they love big government that works for them. And this is exactly what's playing out with the CIA and essentially these agents doing the bidding of big business and corporations as opposed to doing what's necessary to keep our country safe. That was the whole purpose of the CIA.
If you really cared about the war on drugs and that's why you think it makes sense to invade Venezuela, then you should get rid of the CIA. No one's brought more drugs into this country than the CIA. So are we gonna do a war to depose the head of the CIA?
I wish we would.
Right, no, we're not gonna do that. So anybody telling you that it's the drugs, just know they're a giant liar or a total moron who has no idea about anything that's actually happening in the news and in the real world. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. totally not true. But it does keep you updated on our live shows.